Okay, so this is the paper 2 from the summer of 2022. It's the paper that we went through in class today, which was the 2nd of May. It was another one of the post-COVID papers where it was a stripped down syllabus. So this is out of 70, whereas yours will be out of 80, which it always was before COVID. So the grade boundaries are a little bit lower than they will be because they're out for us because they're out of 70 and not 80. So here are the questions that we can access. So if we get everything right, then we are well into the grade A. So there's quite a bit of wriggle room on this paper. So we can answer all the questions from 1 to 8 and then also 12 and 16 as well. Okay, so then we get our formulas. The ones that we may need to use would be the area of the trapezium, the volume of a prism, and the quadratic equation formula at the bottom. Remember, this is paper 2, so it's one where a calculator is expected to be of benefit to you. Doesn't mean you would use it for every question, but certainly it's there to be used. So question 1, rotate the shape below through 90 degrees clockwise about the point -1, 1. And there's 2 marks for this. So it's a rotation, which means it's got to be turned. You've got to know how far to turn it, which is 90 degrees, and in what direction, clockwise, and where to pivot the rotation through. So the pivot is going to be -1, 1. So the first coordinate is the x coordinate, the second coordinate is the y. So we're going to rotate about that point. You're given tracing paper to complete this. If you're at home and you haven't got tracing paper, just go to the kitchen and pinch some grease-proof cooking paper from the kitchen cupboard, and that will do the job for you. That's what this is. So I'm going to be rotating about that point. I'm going to trace my shape. And then I'm going to mark a little up arrow on my diagram, on my tracing, and I figure out now where that arrow is going to be once it's rotated through 90 degrees clockwise. Clockwise is the motion that the hands of a clock make, which is the direction my pen is moving in, and 90 degrees would be a quarter of a turn. So that, when I finish, is going to end up pointing in the direction my pen is pointing there. You put your pen or your pencil at the point where you're rotating about to pin your tracing paper down, and then you turn until your arrow is pointing in the direction you're anticipating, and that then gives you the position of that shape. So what you then do is find the points on the shape, and then using a ruler and a pencil, I'm using pen because it stands out better on these video clips, and there's your rotated shape. 2 marks for that. You'd have 1 B mark for a correct rotation anywhere. So if you've turned that through 90 degrees clockwise but you haven't pinned it there, or you've done -1, 1 as in there, you get the 1 mark, and then you get both marks if you have correctly rotated about the right point. Question 2a. Make m the subject of the formula w equals 8m minus 3. So that means rather than having your formula as w equals, you want it with m equals, and you use your rules of equations to get that. So the first thing we want to do to get the 8m on its own by adding 3. If you add 3 to that side, you have to add 3 to that side as well, which gives you 8m on that side equals w plus 3 on that side. Then to get the m on its own, you have to undo a times 8, which would be a divide by 8. So you would divide that side by 8, and you'd have to divide that side by 8. In algebra, when we conduct a division like that, we write it as w plus 3 over the divisor over 8. So we have w plus 3 over 8 equals m, or m equals w plus 3 over 8. Either of those would be right. So you get 1 mark for the method and getting it down to the 8m on its own, and then the final mark for correctly dividing by 8. The most common wrong answer that as maths teachers we see with this question would be to do w plus 3 divided by 8 equals m. And that's wrong, because the only thing that would be divided by 8 in that case is the 3. So to make it right, you could put brackets around the w plus 3 to say that all needs to be divided by 8. That would be fine, full marks. But you'd more normally expect to see it written like that. Part B, expand and simplify. So we've got a double bracket, so we have to multiply every term in the first bracket by each and every term in the second bracket, and we have to be mindful because we're multiplying with the signs, the plus times a plus, minus times a plus, and so on. So we start with a y and we multiply the y by that. If you're using FOIL, that would be what you call first. Y times y is y squared. Outside, or that I need to multiply by that to have multiplied by both of those things. Y times 4 is 4y. Plus times a minus, the signs are different, the answer is negative. So that will be minus 4y. Then we've got to multiply the plus 5, and that will be plus 5y. Plus times a plus. And then finally, 5 times 4 is 20. Plus times a minus, the signs are different, the answer is negative. 1 mark for that, for correctly clearing out the bracket. And then we've got this bit, the and simplify. Well, there's only one y squared term, so we can't do anything with that. But here now, I've got minus 4y plus 5y. I'm not multiplying, I'm now moving up and down a number line. So I'm at negative 4, and I'm adding 5, which will take me to plus 1y, and then there's only one number term. So y squared plus 1y minus 20. If you just wrote that as plus y, that's absolutely fine. Question 3. The height of a cylinder is 24.8 centimeters. The ratio of the diameter of the cylinder to the height of the cylinder is 3 to 2. So diameter to height. And we want to work out the volume of the cylinder. So the first thing I'm going to do is just draw a little sketch of the cylinder. So cylinder is a prism with a circular face. So we know that its height is 24.8, and we need to find out what its diameter is, and we don't know it. In order to work out the volume of a cylinder, volume is a prism. We've practiced cylinders anyway recently, so hopefully you know it's the area of the circle times the height, but just in case, prism is a three-dimensional shape which you can cut it as many times as you like, and the surface that you're cutting will always be the same shape. So your most basic type of prism would be a cube, cuboid, or a cylinder. So the volume will be the area of the circular part, which is pi r squared, times the height, which is 24.8. So I need to find out what the diameter is and then half it to get the radius. So let's deal with that. So I know that the ratio of diameter to height is 3 to 2, and I know that the height is 24.8. So in order to work out what the diameter is, I've got to work out what 2 is being multiplied by to get 24.8. So you're going to do 24.8 divided by 2, which is 12.4. You can do that on your calculator, no problem. So that's going to be multiplied by 12.4, which means the diameter also has to be multiplied by 12.4. Don't know why I've written 12.8, 12.4. So the diameter is 3 lots of 12.4. .2. To work out the radius, I need half that. Which is 18.6. So now the volume would be pi times the radius, which is 18.6 squared, times the height, which is 24.8. Now pi, you can either use the pi button, but I tend to suggest you use 3.14, which is what they tell you on the front, because then you don't have loads and loads of decimals on your calculator. So I'm going to go 3.14 times 18.6 squared, let's use the x squared button, times 24.8. So that equals 26,940.59712. So I've just written out the full string there. Now, mathematically that's correct, but it's not going to earn me 5 marks because there's another instruction in the question, which is give your answer to 2 significant figures. Now, if that was 2 decimal places, you'd start counting at the decimal point. So 1, 2. So it would be 26940 point, and then you'd look at the next 2, the one after it, and round up. So that would be 0.60. For significant figures, you start counting straight away. So the most powerful digit in that number is the 2, because it's in the 10,000s column. So that's your most significant, that's your second most significant. So this is either going to be 26,000 or it's going to be 27,000. It's nearer because the next digit is a 9 to 27,000. So to 2 significant figures, your answer is 27,000. And then the units of volume would be centimeters cubed. It's not asking you to state those, so you could just leave it as 27,000, but you know, it's good maths to put it in. So there's 5 marks for that. 1 mark will be for the significant figures. Then there'd be a method mark for correctly using the volume of a cylinder formula, so substituting everything in correctly, and then 1 mark for the unrounded answer. And then there'd be a method mark for the ratio, working with the ratio and correctly working out the diameter from that. So 5 marks there. Question 4, so this is our OCW question. In this question you'll be assessed on the quality of your organisation, communication and accuracy in writing. So you need to lay this out appropriately and be consistent with your units. So in the diagram above, the area of the triangle BCD, so BCD, so this triangle is 60 square centimetres. Calculate the length of CD. So I want to work out what that length there is. You must show all your working. So as I've been saying to you over the last few weeks, when you're in a higher tier exam and you see right-angled triangles, they're far more likely to be relating to a Pythag or a trig question than they are an angle properties question. That's not out of the question, but it's more likely to be Pythag and trig. I can see here that I got no angle information apart from their right angles, so I can't see me, and it's not asking me to work out an angle. It's not going to be involving trig, it's going to involve Pythag. Also, in the order of the way the questions work, 99 times out of 100 you get your Pythag question, which is grade C work, prior to your trig question, which is grade B work. So I haven't really had to think too much about it I'm going to have to use some Pythag here. Now the other thing to be mindful of is that when you learn area of a triangle, the bit that you tend to remember is area of a triangle is half base times height. You forget there's an additional word that needs to go in there, which is perpendicular. That means the numbers that you're multiplying for base and height have to be at right angles to each other. Now, the most common mistake people make is they would look at that triangle and think that's the height and that's the base because it's at the bottom of the triangle. That's not the case. You're looking for the two measurements which are right angles to each other, which in this case is CB and CD. Now CD is what we are trying to find out. We know the area of the triangle is 60, so I've got two unknowns in there. I can't work anything out. So I've got to look back at the question now and think, right, well, what information haven't I used? Well, I got a second right angle triangle there with a common side, CB, and in this right angle triangle I know two of the sides. So I can use Pythag to work out BC. So I need to use Pythag in triangle ABC, in that triangle, to calc CB. Right, so when we look at Pythag, we know we've got to square the sides we're given and then square root the answer. That's the only learning bit you've got with Pythag. You spot it's a right angle triangle, you square the sides you know, and then you have to decide whether you're going to add those squares or subtract them. And to decide that, you've just got to figure, is the side you're trying to work out the longest side, the hypotenuse? And remember, I taught you in school that if you think of it, the box points at the hypotenuse. So this is my hypotenuse, which is CB. It's the largest side, so when I square those, I need to end up with a bigger number, which means I add them. So CB, I've got to square 12.8 and 9.6. I've got to add them, and then I've got to square root the answer. So it's always squares, it's always square rooting to get the answer. The only bit you have to decide, once you've spotted its Pythag, is are you going to add or subtract? Okay, so we're back to the calculator. Square root 12.8 squared plus 9.6 squared. Answer 16. And it's a length, so that's going to be 16 centimeters. So now I know that a half times CB times CD is 60. And I know that CB is 16. And I want to work out what CD is. So half of 16 is 8. So to get CD, I've then got to do the opposite of times it by 8, which is dividing by 8. So CD is going to be 60 divided by 8, which is 7.5 centimeters. Okay, 6 marks for that. So you're going to have 3 marks for the Pythag, a method for correctly squaring square rooting, an answer for adding, and an answer for 16. Then you're going to have a method and an answer for working then with the area of the triangle, so having the right figures in there, and then finally sixth mark is for getting your answer of 7.5. And then the OCD bit, OCW, sorry, not OCD, will be just for laying it out in an organised way, explaining that you're going to use Pythag, what the formula of a triangle is, and being consistent when you're talking about the length CB, the units are going to be centimetres, and the length of CD are also in centimetres. That's question 4. Question 5, factorisation. So we learned 2 different ways of factorising. One for expressions like this, where you're just going to look for a common factor between the terms that you've got. So we're looking to take something out of the bracket that is common to both 8x squared and 6xy. Now x is easy, because I can see I've got x times x there and an x there. But with this one, I can also take out 2, because 2 divides into 8 and into 6. So you're looking for the largest number that divides commonly into the parts as well. So 2 goes into 8 4 times, x goes into x squared, leaving x. 2 goes into 6 3 times, and if you take an x out of there, you're just left with y. Now the beauty with these questions is that you can just check them then by multiplying them back out. So 2 times 4 is 8, x times x is x squared. I know that's right, that's 1 mark. 2 times 3 is 6, x times y is xy. I know that that one's right. There's the other mark. So that's common factors. The other type of factorising that we learnt was where we've got a quadratic, and a quadratic is where you have an x squared term, an x term, and a number term. Sometimes it just comes up as a factorise, which means you've got to put them in brackets. If it's an equation, if it's equals 0, then it would be solve, which means you factorise it and then you do your either or. I think there's one of those coming up a bit later. Before this one, I taught you one method which was the same regardless of whether or not there's a number in front of the x squared. There's no number there, it means there's a 1 there. You multiply the number in front of the x squared by the number only term. So that times that, making plus 40. You then list all your factor pairs of 40. So you've got 1 and 20, 1 and 40, 2 and 20. 3 doesn't go into it, 4 goes into it 10 times, and 5 goes into 48 times. 6 doesn't, 7 doesn't, and then we're in 8 and we're repeating again. We then look at these factor pairs and we've got to choose the pair which we can make add up to that middle value of 13. So it's going to be 5 and 8, and to make plus 13 they're both going to be plus. You then rewrite your expression, and instead of having plus 13 you're going to write it as plus 8x plus 5x, or plus 5x plus 8x, it doesn't matter. You then work with the first 2 and look for common factors. The common factor there is x. You take x out and it leaves you x plus 8. X times x is x squared, x times 8 is 8x. And then for the second one, you know, if you practice this enough, that we need the second one to have that repeated bracket. So I'm just looking at this pair now and seeing what I can take out of that to make 8x be left in the bracket. And I can see this 5, and then I've just got to make sure the sign is right here. If it was plus, I'd have 5 times x is 5x, 5 8s are plus 40. So that is going to be plus 5. And then finally, I can take an x plus 8 out, because it's in both, and that will leave me x from that one and plus 5 from that one. So 2 marks for that, 1 for the method of correctly going about factorising, and 1 for getting the right answer. Explain how you can check that your answer to part 1 is correct. Well, you can do that just by expanding out the brackets, just like with that one. So expand brackets, and I could say using FOIL. Yeah, the examiner will know what you mean with foil, first, outside, inside, last. And you get the same thing back. So an E1 explaining that. So then we've got standard form. Calculate 5.7 times 10 to the power of 5 multiplied by 6.4 times 10 to the minus 2. Now, it's unusual to have a standard form question on a calculator paper, because you could just use the standard form button, which my pen is pointing at there. So I can work out that 5.7 times 10 to the power of 5. Okay, so my button strikes there, 5.7, press the times 10 to the, and that comes up 5. And then I'm multiplying that by 6.4 times 10 to the power of negative 2. Now the negative button is different from the subtract, it's where my pen is pointing there. So when you work that on the calculator, you get 36480, which isn't in the list that you're given, because the list you're given is given in standard form. The calculator, although it's got a function which will allows you to type in numbers in standard form, and if the answer was very large or very small, it would give the answer in standard form, but it doesn't always, and there's no function to force it into standard form. So I've now got to turn that into standard form. So if you remember the way that we did this, the decimal point is going to be there, 10 to the 0 is the first, that's the unit, 10 to the 1 is 10, 100, 10 squared, 1000, 10 cubed, 10,000, 10 to the 4. The most significant is in the 3 times 10 to the 4, so this is going to be 3.648 times 10 to the power of 4, which is that one. Question 7, more right angles. They've done Pythag now, so it's unlikely they're going to test Pythag again. And this one you can see is mixing sides and angles. So this is going to be where you're going to write out your trig ratios, so you can figure out which one to use. The diagram below shows a right-angled triangle. Calculate the value of x. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to name our sides. So the hypotenuse is always pointed at by the box, so that's my hype. The opposite is either opposite the angle that you are trying to find or that you're going to use. So that's my opposite, and the one that's left is my adjacent. Now I need to choose which one of these contains O, because that's the side I need to find, and H, because that's the side I know. So O and H is that one. You cover up what you're trying to find, O. The S and the H are in the same level, so that means you multiply. So op equals sine times hype. Opposite is x, is what we want to work out. Sine is attached to the angle, and then the hype is 14.5. So of the 3 marks, 2 marks are for that line. On your calculator, when you press sine, it automatically opens up the bracket. You put the angle in, and then you've got to close the bracket, times 14.5 equals. So that's equal to 9.70239 ... Look at the question. The question isn't asking you to give it to a particular degree of accuracy, but it's measured one of the sides to 1 decimal place. So if you've written that, that's going to get you full marks. But if you write 9.7, then that matches what you were given. So as I said, a method mark for recognizing trig and the sign and that formula, an A mark if all the numbers are correct, and then the final A mark is for getting the answer 9.70 blah blah blah, whatever you round it to. Part B, different right angle triangle, and this time we have to work out the angle itself. So start with the same process. Box points to the height. The opposite is opposite the angle you're trying to find, and what's left is the adjacent. So this time I need to have both the height and the adjacent because I know the two of those. So which one of these links A and H? The middle one. So CAH. And when you're trying to find the angle, it's the C or the S or the T that you've got to cover up. It's that links to the angle. So cos of Y is going to be A over H. A on top of H. So cos of Y would be A 13.5 over H 15.8. Now with the first one, where you're using the angle, you would just press sine or cos or tan. When you're trying to find the angle, you've got to do the opposite. You've got to undo it, which on your calculator is above the button, so it's cos minus 1. So you'd write cos minus 1, open bracket, 13.5 over 15.8. So we do that exactly as I've written it. Shift cos, fraction button to give me that fraction, 13.5 on the top, 15.8 underneath, close the bracket. So exactly as I've written it. And that one I'm going to round again to 1 decimal place. So I'm going to go 31.3 degrees because it's an angle. So same again, method mark for the cos minus 1 A over H. A mark for getting all the numbers the right way around, not with the 15 over the 13, and then an A mark for your correct final answer. Question 8. This cuboid has length 5, width x, and height x squared plus 3, and its volume is 132 cubic centimeters. Now you should know from, gosh, even primary school, you would have found the volume of a cube or a cuboid is length times width times height. So the volume, length times width times height, equals 132 cubic centimeters. So length 5 times width x times height x squared plus 3, and you need to put that in brackets so that you realize that it's all being multiplied, the x squared and the 3 by that, and that equals 132. Okay, so I can see I've got my equals 132. I can see a 5 in there, so let's multiply that out. So 5 times x is 5x, so that's the same as that, 5x times bracket x squared plus 3. So when we multiply out that bracket now, I get 5x times x squared, 5x cubed, 5x times 3 plus 15x equals 132, which is what we were aiming to get. So just 1 mark for that. It's either right or wrong. If it's wrong, if you can't do it, this is one of the questions that, because they give you the equation, you can carry on and answer the second part, because the second part is the trial and improvement question. So a solution of the equation 5x cubed plus 15x equals 132 lies between 2 and 3. Use the method of trial and improvement to find this solution correct to 1 decimal place. So if it's to 1 decimal place, that means my answer is either going to be 2.0, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, 2.6, 2.7, 2.8, 2.9 or 3.0. One of those is my answer. I've got to determine which one. So to eliminate as many as we can, as quickly as we can, we start in the middle. So we try x equals 2.5. And then we write down what we're going to put in our calculator. So we're replacing the x with 2.5. So it's 5. And when we replace a letter with a number, we insert it into a bracket. 2.5 cubed plus 15, 2.5, and we evaluate it using our calculator. So 5 bracket 2.5 close bracket, cubed is shift x squared, plus 15 bracket 2.5 close bracket. So again, on the calculator screen, exactly as I've written it. We work out what that is, 115.625, and compare it to what we're trying to find. We're trying to find 132, so that's too small. If that's too small, there's no point trying anything below 2.5, because they're all going to give you values which are too small as well. So I'm going to go 2.7 next. Oops. 2.7. So 5, 2.7 cubed plus 15, 2.7 equals. Remember from previous questions, you don't need to retype all that. You can just move your cursor in and change that 5 to a 7. And change that 5 to a 7. 138.915, which is too big because I'm looking for 132. So there's no point in me trying anything bigger than 2.7. So I've got to try 2.6, because for the first 2 marks I have to zoom in until I get the answer between 2 consecutive 2-digit numbers. So 2.6 is going to do that for me. So try x equals 2.6. Back onto my cursor. Delete 2.6. Delete 2.6. 126.88. So that's too small, which means there's no point trying anything below 2.6. So here we go. So here are my 2 possible answers. So we write, so x is either 2.6 or 2.7 to 1 dp. So that gets you 2 of the 4 marks. The method for searching and deciding whether too big or too small, and the answer for one of those, getting it between 2 consecutive 1 decimal place number. What we then have to do for the other 2 marks is decide which one of these is our answer. So that means now I know that it's either 2.6 or 2.7, so I go halfway between, which is 2.65. If 2.65 is too big, then I can eliminate everything that side, and everything this side rounds to 2.6. If that's too small, then I can eliminate everything that side, and everything that side rounds to 2.7. So try x equals 2.65, which is 5 bracket 2.65 cubed plus 15 lots of 2.65. Back into my expression, plonk in the extra digit, equals 132.798, and so on, which is too big. So that means everything that side is too big, so therefore x equals 2.6 to 1 dp. So the method mark is for going halfway, and the final answer mark is for the correct conclusion. Okay, so x is 2.6. Hence find the height of the cuboid. So the height is x squared plus 3. Okay, it tells you there height x squared plus 3, and we've got x is 2.6. So the height of the cuboid is going to be 2.6 squared plus 3, 9.76, and everything is to 1 decimal place, so that will be 9.8 centimeters. Either of those will give you that mark. So that's question 8. Question 9 we can't do. Question 10 we can't do. Question 11 we can't do. Questions 12 we can. This is simplifying an algebraic fraction, which is what we learnt the Wendy Williams kiss and smile method. Okay, so the kiss is that times that, gives us the values on top. So I got 4 bracket 2x plus 9 plus that times that, and then the smile is multiplying the two denominators, the bottom ones, together. And we always leave those, we don't tidy that up, that is nice and tidy, but we can simplify the top. So we first of all get rid of the brackets, so 4 times 2x is 8x, 4 times 9 is 36, plus, because there's no sign there, times a plus is a plus. 5 times 3, 15x, plus times a plus is a plus. And then 5 times 7 is 35, plus times a minus, signs are different, answer's negative. All over 3x minus 7, 2x plus 9. Tidy the top up because I got x terms and I got number terms. So 8x plus 15x is 23x. 36 take away 35 is plus 1. All over 3x minus 7, 2x plus 9. Job done. Method mark for kiss and smile. Answer mark for getting rid of the brackets correctly. Answer mark for simplifying the top fully. Question 13 we can't do. Question 14 we can't do. Question 15 we can't do, no right angle, so that's not our trick. Question 16 we can, although you look at it and you think, how can I? Shape A is a square and shape B is a rectangle. The area of the square, A, is equal to the area of the rectangle B. Form an equation in x and hence calculate the value of x. Give your answer correct to 1 decimal place. Right, it's a higher tier calculator allowed paper, and I haven't yet used that. Okay, and it's coming up. You know it's coming up, so it's going to be one of the questions you can answer. This is forming an equation in x and giving your answer to a decimal place. It's likely to be this question. You've just got to figure out how to form the equation. Now, area of a square, you should know. If that side is 5, then the area of the square, all the sides are 5, area is length times width, 5 5s, 25. It's not 5, it's 7x, 7 minus 2x. That means because it's a square, that's 7 minus 2x as well. So the area of the square will be 7 minus 2x times 7 minus 2x. The area of the rectangle, length times width again. So that's going to be 2x times 5x plus 1. And then, is it an inequality? Does it say that the area of the square is greater than the area of the rectangle, or that the area of the square is less than the area of the rectangle? No. It says the area of the square is equal to the area of the rectangle. So the first mark is for that. We then got a fair bit of tidying up to do. So let's get rid of our brackets. It's a double bracket this side, so it's first 7 times 7 is 49. Outside 7 times 2x, 7 2s are 14x. What about the signs? Positive, negative, signs are different, answer's negative. 2x times 7, 14x. What about the signs? Negative, positive, answer's different. Signs are different, answer's negative. And then finally, 2 times 2 is 4. X times x is x squared. Minus times a minus, signs are the same, answer's positive. On this side, 2 times 5 is 10. X times x is x squared, and 2x times 1 is plus 2x. So I'm seeing that I've got x squared terms, x terms, and number terms. It's going to be a quadratic equation, and to make it a quadratic equation, I need to have it x squared x number equals 0. Okay, because I need to find out what's going to be in front of the x squared to make a, what's going to be b, and what value c is. So I am going to, in order to make this equal 0, I'm going to get rid of the 10x squared from that side, and also I'm going to get rid of that plus 2x. So if I'm taking 10x squared off that side and 10x squared off that side, I have to do the same over here as well. Otherwise, you change the value of the equation. Okay, so what does that make? It means I've got a 49, I got a minus 14x plus 4x squared minus 10x squared minus 2x equals 0. That's gone and that's gone. Get your x squared term first of all. So I got plus 4, take away 10, minus 6x squared. Then I've got minus 14x, take away another 14, minus 28, take away another 2, minus 30x, and then number only, I just got 49. Everything else has got an x in it. Plus 49 equals 0. Now we look at my formula, and I can see that a is the number in front of the x squared, minus 6, b is the number in front of the x, and c equals 49. I have to give you more room for this, but then I've made a little box just to make my writing clearer. So x equals minus b. When we replace the letter with a number, we shove it in a bracket. Plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. All over 2 times a. Okay, I'm going to run out of room, so I'm going to go to the additional page, and I'm saying that this is question 16. It's important that you add the question number, and my next line is going to be minus minus 30, minus minus makes a plus. There's a bracket there, we're multiplying, so that's like a minus 1. Minus 1 times minus 30 will be plus 30. Plus or minus? Minus 30 squared, open bracket, minus 30 close bracket squared. Note that the minus I use is that one, not the subtract. 900. And then this bit is going to be 4 times 6 times 49. 4 times 6 times 49 equals 1176. And then I've got minus times a minus in there. That's going to become a plus. Okay? Minus times a plus 4 is minus 4. Minus times a minus is plus 24 times 49. If you get in a muddle, and I mentioned this on the previous video where we had one of these, this cannot be a negative value. So if you ended up doing the square root of 900 take away 1176 because you got that bit wrong, you can see you're going to get an error. So that can only possibly be a plus there in this particular case. All over 2 times minus 6, which would be plus 2 times minus 6, 2 6s are 12, plus times a minus, minus 12. Okay, you can't simplify that any further now. Yes, you can, sorry. Plus or minus the square root of 900 plus 1176, 2076, all over minus 12. So at this point now we have to break up to the either or. Either x equals 30 plus the square root of 2076, all divided by negative 12. Just check what. So we need to give our answer to one decimal place. Okay, so fraction 30 plus square root 2076 on top, and negative, remember not the subtract, negative 12 on the bottom, equals. So I'm going to write that string out beyond one decimal place in case I get that bit wrong. So minus 6.29692 dot 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 to one decimal place. That's my first decimal place. Look at the next one, it's bigger than 5, 6.3. Minus 6.3 to 1 dp. So that's either, or we repeat that but with the minus rather than the plus. Don't have to rejig it, retype it in the calculator. We can just go in and change that plus there. Delete to a subtract. So that's not a negative. You can see the different size in those. That's the subtract, that's the negative. And that's going to be 1.29692 dot dot dot. So to one decimal place 1.3. Okay, so let's go back to the question and what they want us to do. Form an equation in x and hence calculate the value of x. Now I've got two values, but one of those is negative, and in the context of the question where these are lengths, it's not possible to have a negative length. Not possible to have negative length. So x equals 1.3 to 1 decimal place. Job done. 6 marks for that. So we have got a method mark for setting that up, and an answer mark for getting rid of all the brackets, and an answer mark for getting it down to the quadratic equation. You then got a method and an answer mark. Sorry, you won't have that one. You have a method mark for substituting everything correctly into the formula. So you've got to write that out. And then there'll be an answer mark for the 2 possible answers, and then a final answer mark for eliminating the minus 6.3, because in the context of the question you can't have a negative value. Okay, so that is paper 2 from summer 2022. We're going to focus for the remaining lessons that we've got in this half term now on paper 1s, because that's the paper that you've got coming up this side of half term, and then we'll practice. I'll share you some more paper 2s, but we've got plenty of paper 2s through to give you that flavour of where we're going.